I'm Dr. Montserrat Andreys. Welcome to Hey Doc Podcast, a space where we chat, laugh, and share stories of Black, Indigenous, and POC healthcare providers. We inspire young folks to become doctors, deepen connection in our community, and dive into the complexities of our stories. This podcast is designed to be listened to, watched, liked, and shared. While you're listening, pop over to Instagram and TikTok to see photos, quotes, and these doctors busting a move. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and please leave us a review. All right, let's get started. Luvjonez, kick us off with a beat. All right. Welcome to this episode of Hey Doc Podcast. We have Dr. Terry Ycasas here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And I would love if you could say your full name and the type of practice and doctor that you are.
Yeah, so I'm Terry Ycasas and I'm a chiropractor. My practice is a very general practice. I see a lot of different folks, kids, I see teenagers, I see a lot of adults, and including also a lot of retired folks too.
Awesome. And what would you say are the groups that you identify with?
I would say that I'm queer, I'm trans, and I go by they, them. I would say also that I am Chinese, but I was born in the Philippines, so I have that culture, the Chinese-Filipino culture, and I was pretty much raised in the U.S. So, my parents migrated here before I was a year old, so there's a lot of influence, right? A lot of like American culture, obviously, but having a family that was raised in the Philippines, there's a lot of Filipino influence in our Chinese culture also. So quite the hodgepodge here.
The first thing that makes me think of is delicious food.
Indeed. I have to say, and I'm kind of bragging here, I grew up and my mom was known for her cooking and she cooked really well. And I grew up with a lot of great cooking, a lot of great foods. So, it is certainly one of the things I miss having moved away from home.
Where is your family?
They're down in the LA County area. So I grew up in Southern California. A lot of, quite the diverse group right there, right? So, I was very fortunate to have been raised in a community that was, very involved in like Asian community, Pacific Islander, Black, Latinx, white culture. So it was a real, what's the word I'm looking for? It was a real, keep want to say treat, maybe because I got food in my mind, but it's not necessarily treat. I guess what I want to say is I'm grateful for the experience, that I had growing up there and like the wide variety of experiences and cultures that I was able to engage with.
Yeah, that Southern California life is really beautiful. Like there's a lot of richness to it.
Indeed. And you've got like almost 24/7 sun, right?
Yes, sun and beach. I guess depending on where in California, how inland you are, but it sounds like a great place to grow up.
It was. Yeah, it was.
How was it then growing up for you in that area? It sounds like it was really diverse. It was a lot of different types of experiences and people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that I grew up, very influenced obviously by the Asian culture. So a lot of my friends were API folks, a lot of Latin folks, and obviously white folks also. And it was very influenced with the Asian culture in that, I guess I've got a couple of different thoughts going on here, right? One is the challenge of being a person of color growing up in America, especially in the 70s and 80s, where there really wasn't as much of an awareness around race and culture and sensitivities and having a little bit more respect. So I grew up really wishing that I was white, or like not being a child of immigrants, really wanting to be more normal in that regard, right? So there was that challenge in that regard. And in terms of being raised Asian, I think that thing that really influenced me is like the sense of education, right, and work ethic, things like that, that really was enmeshed into us like early on. So, there's quite a few things, I guess, that have been involved in that sort of, being a person of color in America, I guess, right?
Yeah. So I'm so curious. When you think about like little baby Terry,
Yeah.
what did that normal mean to you? Like, what did that whiteness mean to you? What were the things that you wished for?
Well, I think the facial features, are a part of it, having more of like the Caucasian features. Um, and And I think, it's interesting. I think about this because food is so different, and people's approach and perspective and appreciation of food is so different now. Where, we grew up in a family where you would have these like different smells in your house, right? That your friends would come over and they'd make fun of you because of the different smells, or your house looked a little bit different, and it's interesting to me now where so many people seem to embrace that difference. Like, what is like the more interesting or more far-fetched food that we can have, that we can all try? It's become, I don't know, it's become a little bit more accepted, I guess. So, but growing up back then, it was a challenge because I was different, not only physically, right, the way I looked, but also like in terms of what we had for lunch, what we ate, and how our house smelled, or how we decorated our house. It was quite different, and I wanted to be normal, quote unquote normal, whatever that is in white America, right? So there was that challenge.
Yeah. I think so many of us can relate to that, right? And then at the same time, it was so cool to go to other people's houses and be like, what are you all eating over here?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I remember. I had like a best friend who was Jamaican in junior high, and part of high school, and had great food at their home. And then I had, really close friends who were Korean and Indian and Japanese, and again, had great foods in their homes, like mom cooking, right? So it was awesome. Yeah.
So it seems like you're quite a foodie. Is that one of your hobbies?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm a little reluctant to describe myself as a foodie, but I would say I really enjoy food. And, let's just say I travel to eat, right? Like when I travel somewhere, I'm like, well, the most important things are, where am I going to eat? And then I go, okay, what museum am I going to visit in between? What other things am I going to check out in between this snack and first dinner, and then first dinner and second dinner, that sort of thing. So, and alluding to what I was talking about earlier, which is, I really do try to seek out what is unique and what is different about these places. And to go into a little bit more in depth about that, I do love traveling. And that's why I talk about, like, when I go to like Singapore or Malaysia or Myanmar, like, what are the unique things that I can have there, right, that you can't quite get anywhere else. So that's what I really enjoy.
Oh my gosh. I still, my favorite thing to do is also to travel. And I still haven't made it down to that part of the world.
Southeast
And I have
Asia?
been, oh my goodness, between like the food, and I love plants. So between the food and the plants, like I feel like I would just be in heaven.
It'd be quite the experience, I'm sure. Yeah. But do you be prepared for the humidity? I have to say that I felt really restricted by the humidity, where I didn't want to go out as much because it was so muggy, and I felt like my energy was constantly zapped. And it's horrible for me to say, but I kind of wanted to stay in the hotel room because it was actually AC'd. And I'm like, I would have to really muster up energy to get myself going. I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let's go check out this temple. Let's go check out this, plantation, or, whatever it might be. So yeah, be prepared for that.
All right. So bring my terry cloth headband and like,
yes,
just
exactly.
make it happen. And do you have any secret talents?
Secret talents? My gosh. Well, I would say that I'm a pretty decent cook. I can cook well. I've gotten some decent compliments there. I really enjoy photography. I love, playing around and editing photos, things like that. And gosh, secret talents. What else could I describe about that? I don't know.
Is there anything?
Sorry, go ahead.
Is there anything your patients would be surprised to know that you are really good at?
Not really. I think I say that because in some ways, I'm a bit of an open book with patients where I share, like there's a lot of dialogue and conversation, and there's a lot of fun and lightheartedness that I have with patients. So there's a lot of sharing back and forth. So I don't know if there's really anything secret in that regard. I think I probably am boring in that way.
No, that sounds wonderful for your patients to have so much access and to really get to know who their provider is. I think it really helps a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to be.
So if you weren't a doctor, what do you think you would have done?
Oh my gosh. It's been an interesting journey. I feel like I've been through so many different I've gone through so many different paths and avenues of things that kind of led me here, that I feel like I'm in the right place, and to share a little bit about that, I was a political science major. I got my degree in political science in undergrad, and I remember working on political campaigns while in school. And by the time it was all said and done, I realized I didn't want to work in politics, and I didn't want to work on campaigns, and I certainly didn't want to be a lawyer. I realized that. But there was a part of me that really wanted to have some sort of impact on the world. And I think that's why I went into political science. But then after college, I ended up moving to the San Francisco Bay Area. So this was back in LA that I got my undergrad, right? And then I went to San Francisco after college and worked at a nonprofit. And it was a nonprofit that worked on reducing gun violence in East Oakland. So I felt like there was like some good impact there. And I ended up moving to Portland about a year and a half later, because it was at a time where it was the height of the .com era in the Bay Area. And so there was just this incredible density of people, and things were happening. And I think I was a little overwhelmed, and I was looking for something a little bit calmer and mellow. So I moved to Portland and ended up working, as an admin for a little while, and decided at some point I wanted to go into high tech. So I got some certification in high tech, worked around at different, local businesses and as a contractor, and then ultimately landed a contract position at Intel. And while I was working at Intel, my manager at the time was like, hey, even though you don't have an engineering degree, I really believe in you. We'll pay for your engineering degree, and we'll give you this engineering title, and you'll work for us, and we'll have you get your engineering degree. I was like, oh, great, this is wonderful. Yeah. So then I was like, okay, let's do this. And then a couple of years later, I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is really floating my boat, right? This is not really what I'm envisioning for myself. And interestingly, at the time, I was actually seeing this doctor who's a chiropractor, a naturopath, and acupuncturist. She's all three in one. And she really helped shift and change my paradigm and my perspective on medicine, right? Because I had been raised with allopathic medicine my entire life. Mm-hmm. And so when she shifted that for me, I was like, wow, there's so much more. Like, I can not just be okay, I can be healthy, and I can be more optimal, right? Yeah. So I started that journey with her and noticed that there was like such great differences that I had in my life. And interestingly, there was this time where Intel, or actually I should say the economy was turning down. This was like 2000s, early 2000s, and Intel decided they were going to close down the group that I was in, right? So in that, I realized, I was like, I really don't want to look for another high-tech job, because this is not what I want. So then I said, I really don't know what I want, but I know it's not high-tech. So I continued to work with this provider, and one of the things that she does is do energetic and emotional clearings. So we talked about it. We went through that process, and we went through a series of emotional clearings. And funnily enough, had you asked me a week before and said, hey, do you want to go back to school? I'd be like, heck no, Funnily enough, again, we go down a couple of weeks after doing some emotional clearings. What do you want to do? Well, I was like, I think I want to go into alternative medicine. I think I want to do what this provider does, which is, again, impact and have this positive influence on people, in one way or another, right? And it just so happened to be healthcare. So my long roundabout answer to your question is, I don't know. I feel like I've landed in a really good place, because I feel like I've, jumped to all these different in different industries and realized, maybe these aren't the areas for me, or they don't really resonate with me as well. But this path that I'm on right now, and obviously I'm continuing to grow and become more in it, but where I've landed is I get to help people, right? I get to help people, one. Two, I get to help people be better in general. So, you come in with issues that you have, but, we can help you with that. But then on top of that, what can we do to make you even better, right? To have more of an optimal health, right? So So sorry about the long roundabout answer, but I think I'm in a good place. I'm where I feel like I should be, at least for now. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was not long roundabout at all. Like, I love the details of it, because I think that's one of the misconceptions about becoming a doctor, is that people think that if you didn't decide at 16 and start doing, summer programs, and if you didn't just like go straight through and, have like a 4.5 GPA and, and get all the letters of recommendation from like, the presidents of like a medical school or something, that you won't become a doctor. And that is not at all true. There's so many ways of getting to being in this profession. And not only that, but that all of those things then influence the way that you then doctor.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. I think that my political science degree helped me have a better understanding of people, right? And how we all interact in some ways. So it has come in very handy. Yeah. And as a side note too, yeah, I would agree. When I was doing prerequisites, and man, organic chemistry, I tell you, organic chemistry. I remember I took organic chemistry at PSU. It was a condensed summer course on organic chemistry, and I was like, I don't know if I can make this. I don't know if this is going to happen for me. But anyways, the reason I bring this up is because I met a couple of other folks who were in organic chemistry to go on, and they were planning on going on to medical school to get their MD, and they both happened to be engineers in their prior lives. So to what you're saying, like you said, it's not that you are, high school and you're preparing, you're like, okay, I'm going to go to med school, and then I go to college, I'm preparing for med school. It's like, I think we do have all these different paths that we take before we end up where we might, fit in a little bit better after we realize a little bit more about ourselves, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I am so impressed with people that can do a condensed organic chemistry class.
Thanks. Let me just say, I had my breakdowns. Like I said, I wasn't even quite sure if I was going to make it. It was so intense that, I was like, I might not be able to start chiropractic school in the fall. But fortunately it worked out. Yeah.
Was that your only low point in terms of feeling like, I don't know if this doctoring thing is going to happen for me?
Well, in terms of prerequisites, yes. Right. Mm-hmm. Once I got into med school, I really didn't realize what it entailed. I didn't know what to think. People talk about how intense med school can be, and how you don't have a life. And I think at least for myself, I didn't really have a sense of what that meant, right? Like, then I get into chiropractic school, and then we're like in class from 7:30 to 5:30 almost every day. And then you're supposed to go home and study, right? And then come back and be in school again. And, it's like rinse and repeat. So it was so intense. And, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not an academically inclined person. So it was very challenging to not be academically inclined and be in an academic setting, right? And for people to have these expectations of you to be able to move through it and somehow be successful. So there's that challenge of, you don't have very much time at all, and then functioning in that academic setting. I really, that first semester or that first term, I was like, I don't know if I can make this happen. It was so intense, and it was really scary, right? It was scary because it was like a whole new experience, and I'd never experienced something so intense before. And again, mind you, I don't function academically or as well. And so this like fear and this like overwhelm came over me, and I didn't know, I like froze, like there was a paralysis and not really being sure what to do or how to move through. But in the end, it was really about putting one foot in front of the other and, just doing what you have to do and heads down, and plow through it. Right. But yeah, it was, there were certainly some challenges. And I think as each term came about, I would find it was this course that was the challenge, or it was this approach, or this, I don't know, this topic or whatever it is, this instructor and maybe I don't gel as well, or I'm having a harder time understanding this instructor, these sort of things. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. What, for me, the first term, it was like, can I get up and make it to school and study?
Yes.
Can I make sure I take a shower? And can I make sure I eat? Like, it was so down to the core basics of life function. It was shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Agreed. Agreed. Like, how do you do all the things that you normally took for granted and then do this undertaking, major, massive undertaking at the same time, right? And I think, it's like the basics, like trying to find your basics of like, Maslow's, foundation, right? What are your basics? How can you find these basics in the midst of this intense experience, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you were in school, what was your favorite study music?
I'm one of those people that had a hard time listening to music and studying at the same time. It was like too much information coming in. So I actually found that there's this type of music that you would put earbuds on or like earphones, and it helped you focus and concentrate a little bit more. So that's what I ended up using because I felt like I needed as much advantage as I could, or like whatever I could utilize to just help me in that academic setting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True story. You know what I found ended up really helping me with focus, I found this in undergrad, was acupuncture.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Acupuncture the week before finals, like when I just had to like really super hunker down, it helped me with a lot of my clarity and retention. And I found out by accident, but I was really grateful for it because then I was able to use that. Yeah.
Apparently I, should have been utilizing acupuncture more. I mean, again, anything I could utilize to help, get through this arduous program, right?
Totally.
But I'm so glad for you that you're able to find that for yourself and that it helped you.
Yeah, I was looking for anything. I was like,
I can relate.
What were your favorite study snacks in school?
Chocolate. Chocolate was like my go-to. Yeah. It was, I think there was something about, maybe a little bit of the buzz that you get from caffeine in the chocolate, but also the magnesium from chocolate, which I think is this interesting, dynamic of like giving you a buzz, but then like magnesium and calming you a little bit. So I don't know. I think there's something emotional that was like causing me to gravitate towards chocolate.
Yeah, I love it. It's like the ultimate science mind, be like, it must be the magnesium that I'm craving. So once you were in the program, what parts of the process do you feel like were unique to you?
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so in terms of trying to figure out how to navigate things, or like any component of the educational experience that you were like, this is super, super easy, like I can cruise through this, or some other parts where you were just like, oh my gosh, send help.
Let me see. I think what really helped me, and I'm not quite sure if this is what you're asking, so forgive me or like help redirect me if that needs to be, but I found that going to chiropractic seminars and workshops were like the best thing for me. I think a couple of things in that regard is that, one, it gave me a little bit more context, in terms of what I was doing and why I was doing the things that I was doing, right? Like, okay, here's the end result. This is what I'm looking at and what I want to ultimately do. But it also gave me some frame of reference, like, to have that real world setting of C1. Well, this is C1. Okay, when you talk about C1, this can be affected, right? So, and this is what might happen in your body. So it was great to have the academic portion, which, I like I said, I struggle through, but then this like very kinesthetic real world setting to meld and infuse the two to at least help me not only move through the program because the academic part was very hard, but also like to have that like future projection as well. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Just having, even I thought for me being in additional workshops and seminars was something that I have really loved about the chiropractic profession is how much chiropractors love their job.
Yeah.
And I would go to these seminars and there would be people that were there for their continuing education, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, you're a student? And I'd be like, yes. I'd be like, yes, they're on a Saturday, after
Yes.
being in school all week.
Yes.
And they would be like, we know it's really, really hard right now, but you are going to have a thriving practice, and your patients will love you and you will love them. And this will all be worth it. Just hang tight. We're waiting for you on the other side. And I was like, this is beautiful, whereas I knew somebody that was in law school at the same time that I was in chiropractic school, and everyone was like, law school is terrible, and the first few years of practicing law are terrible, and then eventually you'll get a job that makes it all worth it. And I was like, I don't want that job.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so true, right? It's so true to have people on the other side who've gone through it, to not only share their empathy and compassion and like their understanding of the process, but then to have like this light at the end of the tunnel of like, when you make it to the other side, it's actually really great too, right? You're going to have this great thriving practice and patients are going to love you. I love that. That's so wonderful.
Yeah, it definitely encouraged me to just, make it through that next weekend and like, keep going. It was a really, I think still to this day when I run in, and then now I do the same thing to the students.
That's great.
I have a few that come shadow me because of our sports practice. And I'm like, hold on, it's going to be great. I promise. And I'm like, I remember those words. I remember saying that to me.
Well, I think it's great because I think you experienced it on one end, right? In the beginning when you were in school. And I suspect it was such an encouraging and inspiring thing to hear, especially when you're in the midst of, like this, like you said, oh my God, like Saturday morning and things like that. But then, knowing what you went through and having those such incredible words of encouragement and then being on the other side, it's like, yeah, this is, you've gone through it and you know what the experience is like and you can share that back to folks, right?
Totally.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love it.
And so now that you're in your practice, do you have a lot of queer or trans people that come to see you?
It's funny. I actually don't. I would say I have some folks who are, but I really don't have that much. I would say the majority of the folks that see me right now are women, middle-aged, cis, and I would assume straight white women, and they are usually the population that comes to me are folks who have are usually like in yoga, Pilates, or maybe folks who are the older women tend to have issues like acute issues that we're trying to get them out of and keep them out of those those acute situations or acute symptoms, right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, let me, if I may add to that, I am working on creating more of an environment to actually have more queer and trans folks as well. It's something that I want to be able to, how do I say, offer, obviously, but I think a large part of it is not only the experience that I have, but also the, like a safe setting or like an understanding setting where folks can feel welcome and feel safe and feel like they don't have to explain themselves. That's something that I'm currently working on, just so you know.
That's awesome. That is actually how I came to know about you. I have been building a list of Black, Indigenous, and POC healthcare providers here in the Portland area that I have on my website. And in the process of looking through it, I have a number of trans patients in my practice, and I wanted to be able to just offer it as a referral, just like, and the acupuncturist, Danielle Melanson, that I work with in my office was like, do you know about Terry? And I was like, no, tell me about Terry. In that very Danielle Melanson way,
That's very, I see, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
And so that was how I then came across your website, and I came across this amazing manual that you created.
Thanks.
For those of you that are watching, you can get this manual from Terry's website, which is right under her right now. For those of you that are listening, it's a manual called Maximizing Healing, Supporting Surgery with alternative medicine. But specifically the article or the pamphlet, it's like a mini book.
Yeah, it's an ebook, short ebook as I describe it.
Yeah, it's an ebook. Thank you. Was specifically conceived by you because of your experience with top surgery.
Yeah. So I decided to go through top surgery. Well, top surgery had been percolating in my mind for a little while. I would say I probably sat on it for about 3 years before I decided to move forward and, did the appointments that I needed to do in order to get the process going. And I realized at some point too that, surgery isn't simply just surgery. Like I just go through it, I suffer the consequences of surgery and suffer the consequences of like healing through surgery. There is something more to it than that, right? I mean, in that being an alternative medicine provider, I was like, there are things that I can do. There are steps that I can take, to be able to help optimize my body as much as possible before going through the surgery. And even after surgery, like how I can support myself in my healing process, right? So I decided I was going to, well, first off, obviously the whole alternative medicine approach to health and wellness is very different than allopathic, right? And also I've spoken to some other friends who are trans and who have gone through surgery, and having heard their process, or their journey and what they did or didn't do kind of helped me formulate some sort of strategy in my mind as to how I wanted to approach it. So all those things infused, with my background and having had conversations with folks, what I decided to do was 1 year before I decided to do intermittent fasting. So what my big goal was, let me reduce as much inflammation as possible before I go through surgery, which is going to create even more inflammation, right? So by doing that, I can again create a more optimal environment for my body to heal from something as intense as surgery. So a year before that, I did intermittent fasting. About a month before I went into surgery, I went on this like super clean diet, removed any potential allergens I might have, like obviously gluten, dairy, sugar, soy. I ate mostly a vegan diet, with like chicken and fish, because pork and beef can be inflammatory. And I tried to do as much in terms of supporting my body as possible, which is like, let me get acupuncture, let me get adjusted regularly, things that I had been doing before already, but even more intensely right before or leading up to surgery. And, doing IV therapy, getting all the minerals and vitamins, whatever supplements my body needed, let me get it to a really good place. And I'm really grateful for having done that, because I healed so well. And this not be bragging, I'm trying to share this, that it can happen to folks too. It can happen to anybody, right? If we do our own due diligence, if we take our own steps. But I healed so well that I even surprised my surgical team. When I went in for my 1 week post-op appointment, they were like, did you just have surgery? Like I was literally out and about, and I think it's a testament to our bodies, right? It's a testament to what it can do when we give it the right environment to do the things that it needs to heal. When we remove the obstacles and the hurdles, and again, we support it as much as possible, we're going to have a thriving environment. And that's what my ebook speaks to. And again, it's something that anyone can access, obviously, but it's anything that anyone can do, right? Like these are all resources that are available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, because for us, I think we get so much theoretical information and we read so many articles, and, not a lot of the things that we treat are things that we have experienced ourselves. So we go through it with so many people that we start really building a strong foundation for how to help. Yeah. But to be in such a unique situation where you're specifically, it's like, you could prepare for the trauma that was about to happen to your body. Most of the time, like if you trip coming off a step and you twist your ankle, like you didn't have the time to be more optimal in your health before that, right? Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, you could in general, but you couldn't plan for it.
Right.
And so to have the knowledge, like this is going to happen, like how can I get my mind, body, and spirit ready for this to happen so that it's not only the least painful and the fastest healing, but like how can my body rebound from this like in the most efficient way with all the knowledge and tools that you know about healing.
Yeah.
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 It's
Sorry.
the coolest.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So in general, how do you feel that the healthcare community could serve the queer or trans community more effectively?
I think it's really tough, when you are a trans person, right? Because there's a lot of phobia around it, transphobia, and I think that there can be some fear around trying to seek out healthcare, especially as a trans person. So I feel like there is a big black hole in terms of alternative healthcare for trans folks, right? And I think Portland, we are in a little bit of a bubble where that trans health and queer health is much more accepted, and it's not stigmatized, it's not looked down upon, and that people have really good access to it. But I guess the big black hole that I tend to think of is alternative healthcare, right? That a lot of current healthcare access is very allopathic, and there isn't as much focus on trans healthcare in terms of like, okay, you're going through hormones. How do we manage that in an alternative healthcare setting, right? You're going through surgery. Again, what can we do to support you with that, right? Or you're coming out of surgery, right? Things like that. So there is this emptiness that I feel like Portland has an opportunity to be able to step into, because we have so many queer folks and we have so many trans folks. But I would love to somehow at some point be able to fill that, in the near future.
Yeah. I similarly have found the same, when I was looking to resources and places where I could refer patients. One, my very imperfect method of trying to find trans doctors, which is literally typing in trans doctors in Portland, or looking through many different type of medical groups and looking through and just trying to discern which I found extremely comical, because I was like, depending on where somebody is in their transition, I would never know that they were trans, like somebody has to actually say so in like a bio or something like that, because, there's like, what are the hints, that someone might be trans. And so, but I found it, even as an exercise of me looking for that, I ended up finding a lot of people around the world that did somehow put out, some kind of beacon that they were specifically either trans medical students or trans doctors in a particular area. So there's like this young woman in India that I'm following through her journey in school as a trans student, and the challenges that she is coming across. And there's a doc in London that I follow, and but I find it on the one hand, I'm really grateful for them sharing their experiences, because I feel like it allows me to understand better how to serve the community that's coming in my door. But also I'm like, I can't believe I have to look as far away as India.
Yeah, agreed.
And it makes, when I started thinking about it, because I was like, why don't we have more trans folks in healthcare? And I was like, well, so many, have not had the benefit of our type of experience. Like, so many have really been trying to just be healthy and survive and try to navigate things with a lot less resources.
That's very true.
And so to be able to have the extra energy to then put yourself through the rigors of a medical program, make it through academia, make it into a medical program, and make it out into practice, while also having the challenge of navigating the world as a trans person. And it's cis folks that make it hard, because trans people would be just fine if we would just let them do their thing.
Yeah. No, I can certainly appreciate what you're saying. It does remind me of going through school and coming out of school. And there's my own internal homophobia going through that process and coming out of it and like going, okay, well, do I want to work with docs? And if I try to work with docs, like maybe outside of Portland, am I going to have a harder time as a provider, one with the other docs that I might be working with and also with that particular community in terms of patients. So there was definitely that element of fear, and it was a struggle and a challenge for me to move through it. And I always tried to find the safer routes of, well, let me stay within the confines of Portland because it felt safer, and the way I present is very different, and not everyone's going to be open and accepting of that, right? And then I think that with how trans health has come about and how being transgender is more welcome, it made it easier for me to be able to go through that process, especially in today's age and today's time in our society, and especially in Portland, because it's okay, right? It's okay these days to be trans and to go through a process and procedure to feel more comfortable in your body, right? And, I don't know if I would have felt comfortable doing that 5, 10 years, 15 years, I mean, hats off to those who are the pioneers, right? Because I certainly am not one of those, but they certainly paved the way and made it a lot easier for me. That said, there still can be some fear, right? And some, again, it could be my own transphobia or homophobia that keeps me from being able to move forward in certain ways that, let's be very clear here, a straight white cis man would be doing something very easily without even thinking about it, right? So, yeah. So I hear that. And I don't know, I think our world is changing and for the better, I hope, in that way. And I do think because we are more open to queer folks, we are more open to trans folks. And I remember growing up, never thinking that gay marriage would even be possible. And here we are, with gay marriage, and that there are insurance companies who are paying for gender assignment surgeries, right? Like I had my top surgery covered by insurance. Like I never would have thought that would have happened growing up, right? So yeah. So it's awesome. It's awesome. And there are challenges and there's like some awesome aspects that are happening in the world and that it's changing. So
yeah. Do you have any, I don't even know if this is a good question, but do you have any network or folks that are also trans doctors that you communicate with or kind of have support with?
I don't, unfortunately. It's a sad statement that, I don't really have any other trans folks or trans doctors that I work with right now, and I think it's more about the current focus of like my current focus of chiropractic work, and like I said before, I'm hoping to change and evolve that into more of into a more generalized alternative healthcare setting that can provide wellness care and support for anyone, right? Not just trans folks, but definitely having trans folks have the ability to pursue it with this approach that I'm taking on, but then also for anyone else who just wants a well life, right? A good life, a healthy life, that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay, cool. I'm all for that. In your opinion, just kind of spitballing here, solving the world's problems over, podcast episode. What do you think we could do? What do you think that we could do to get more Black, Indigenous, or POC and queer and trans folks in medicine?
Oh, that is a tough question. And I say it's tough not only because of the hurdles and obstacles that have been created, right, in our society and in our culture. And maybe it leads into this other piece, which is like those hurdles and obstacles have made it challenging for me to even think about what are some of the things that we can do to help support that, right? Like I in all honesty, I hadn't really even thought about it until you brought it up, right? So I feel like it's something that I might have to sit on and allow to percolate and digest a little bit and, consider things. And I guess it's a sad statement, right? That something doesn't really just come up off the top of my head and be like, here's how we can do it. I'm sorry to say I don't have a good answer to that question right now.
Yeah, well, I am with you, which is why I ask everybody, because I'm like, all right, hive mind between all of us, like maybe we can eventually get to,
Yeah.
maybe one day somebody will be like, well,
Right.
the
Well,
answer
I
will
think what
crack
you're
open.
doing is great, right? Like this is, I think it's all about steps, right? In anything, in any situation where we as people who have been marginalized, we as people who haven't really been as seen, it's all about the steps. It's all about the steps that we're taking. And no matter how minute or small those steps are, they're all building momentum into this greater, bigger picture that we're all hoping to see, right? And it's going to take some time, but it's also not only those steps, it's the conversations, right? So this with what you're doing, with what you're offering, we're having conversations, and you're offering this avenue for folks to be able to have more information, I think is awesome. So I think this is where we start, right? Having these conversations, and whatever these baby steps are, whatever the baby steps happen to be for anybody, I think it's going to somehow, it will ultimately lead us to where we want to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm here for that. I'm really rooting for this next generation. I'm so impressed with how autodidactic they are with. I think even when we were growing up, I always craved information, and there was so much gatekeeping and so much lack of access, right? Like, I remember going to a computer at my high school and like being there too long in the library and being like, you're taking too much time on the computer, and me being like, but I want to learn things. And now, like, our youth are really showing us how absolutely curious they are. They are taking so much control over their educations, and like they'll spend hours looking up a topic on YouTube and documentaries, and they have so much at their fingertips, and they're just taking things to a whole other level, with like TikTok and YouTube creators and all this stuff. And I'm just like, go, like, do your thing. I love how they're just like punching through the artificial barriers that we had constructed for them before, or for all of us as children, or young adults. And I'm really excited to see what comes from all of that work. Like, I think there's no greater champion for social justice issues than like an overconfident, or like a very well-read and confident young adult. They are just like truth and justice, and I won't stand for this. And you're like, cool, I'm going to stand back here and I'm just going to be the backup dancer, like lead the way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot more. Like you said, there's a lot more information. There's a lot more available to the younger generation. And what I love about the younger generation too is these hangups that we had in my generation and my parents' generations. They don't have these hangups. They're just like, you're queer, okay. You're trans, okay. You're a person of color, okay. No big deal, And that's what I love about that. That's what I love about that generation. And I think that they're continuing to create. They're creating their own momentum in their own ways, but they're fueling the momentum that a lot of other folks have started and created. And it's all building up, I feel.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have such high hopes.
Yeah,
I'm like, anything I can do to support our youth, like, I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as we kind of wrap up, I just have two little kind of like softer questions for you. One is, what are you still feeling excited about learning about in life, whether it's like for your work or your practice or just like everyday Terry life?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways a few different things that I'm looking at, actually. One is, I'm really about personal growth, right? In one way or another. How is it that I can grow as a person spiritually? How can I be a better person? So there's always that aspect of, how can I be a better person? 10 years from now, how can I be a better person in terms of like just how I interact with folks, how I serve the world, things like that. On on a professional level, I think the next level that I'm looking at is more of a quantum physics, quantum neurology approach to healing the body, right? So I haven't really started it yet, but the ball is kind of rolling in some ways where I've started looking into more of that, how that approach and what can I do for myself to get that ball rolling. And then the other part is, we talked about this earlier, which is that trans care, that support for people who are going through surgery, the support for people who are going to be changing their bodies hormonally, right? Like, what is it that I can do? And this is like, some time down the line, what is it that I can do to support my community? Again, not only to help them feel safe and comfortable and be understood, but also to offer resources and services that they're not going to be able to get anywhere else, right? So that's where I'm looking.
Yeah, I love it. Please let me know any way that we can support you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
As you're going on your journey. Yeah, I'm so excited that this is happening.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks.
And my last question, what brings you joy, Terry?
What brings me joy? Really, it's helping people, honestly. It's a situation where folks come in and they say, wow, I can't lift up my granddaughter. I can't play with my son. I can't do the things that I love, right? I can't, whatever it is, I can't garden, I can't cook, I can't, sew, whatever it is. And taking these people through this journey where we remove blockages and barriers in their body and get them to a place where not only can they function and do all the things that they, do on a daily basis, but also the things that they love, the things that bring them joy, right? So being able to help get people to a place that they can do things that bring them joy is what helps bring me joy also. It's really awesome and incredible to see when somebody comes in and goes, oh my God, I can lift my arm again and I can do this. I can do my job again. I can, I can participate in this family function that I couldn't participate in. That is incredible. And it's really an honor to be a part of as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is, we really do have amazing jobs.
We do. We certainly do. Yeah, it is really quite incredible. Yeah.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us today. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. Yeah. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was so much fun to be here. I appreciate you inviting me onto your show. And I appreciate you paving again the way, and in these little steps that you're taking to help bring more information to people that again aren't available or easily available to folks, and this like a snowball effect. I would love to see where this all takes you. This is an exciting journey.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah, I never would have predicted at the beginning of 2020 that I would be doing a podcast and getting to meet and chat with so many amazing BIPOC docs. And so I'm excited to see where it goes too.
That's incredible. I'm excited for you too.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
All right, we'll chat soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone, that's our show for today. Please follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if this episode hit home for you, let us know. We would love to hear how these stories reach you. Hey Doc Podcast is recorded at the Portland Center Stage digital streaming studio with the AV engineering, logo design, website, theme music, and editing all done by the incomparable Jonas Angelette and invaluable technical savvy of Katie Wen and Greg Lee. Instagram and TikTok management is brought to you by the fantabulous Jen Thompson. And if you want to see the faces of these BIPOC docs, you can watch the podcast on Hey Doc Podcast website, and you can listen on all of your favorite podcast streaming sources. Check out our fun posts of your favorite BIPOC docs on the Instagram page and watch them bust a move on TikTok. Thank you for every listen, share, like, and emoji. I am super grateful to all of you that tune in to listen and to all the wonderful docs that come share their stories. See you next time, friends.